Okay, hi everyone. So yeah, let's bounce on the presentation that Matt has just delivered, right? And I would like to welcome you to this industry panel session. The topic that we are going to dive into is really to explore the role of open data lakehouse in enabling data democratization. Okay, so this is a kind of open discussion that we are going to have. My name is Yassine Faye. I'm looking after a team of solutions architects for international, as mentioned by Matt, EMEA and APJ, and I'll be the moderator for this session. So let's get started, and I'm going to ask the gentlemen of this panel to start introducing themselves. Start maybe from the far right.
Hi there, Peter Rees. I'm a lead enterprise data architect at Maersk. So I've been working in this whole area for, from the early days of MIS systems, data warehouses, through Hadoop, and now onto these sort of cloud data lakes and lakehouses. So quite a range of experience there.
Right. Hi, so I'm Matt Aslett, Research Director at Ventana Research. As was mentioned earlier, I've been in the industry and as an analyst in the data analytics space for actually for about 15 years, but 15 months with Ventana.
Hi everyone, Shamal Shah. I'm a partner at Baringa Partners. We're a consultancy kind of with a heritage in energy, but kind of work across multiple industries, and I guess about 20 years of experience, kind of primarily in consultancy, but I guess I've got the privilege of kind of going into lots of different types of organisations and seeing kind of the challenges they have with data and kind of working out what the right kind of architecture solution and kind of organisation is to support their data challenges.
Right, JB Onofre, I'm Principal Engineer at Dremio. I'm a member of the Apache Software Foundation for 15 years now, and working roughly on 20 Apache projects as PMC member.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. So let's set a little bit of context here. Okay, so we are witnessing a kind of tension or friction between, say, two communities. On one hand, we have the business users or the data analysts who would like really to access data, any data from any source at the highest level of fidelity and in full autonomy. This is basically their dream. This is what they're struggling to get. And on the other side, we have what you may call central IT, who really would like to offer this kind of services, but not only they lack the appropriate tools and platforms, but more importantly, they struggle to have the appropriate governance in place, right? To reduce the security risks. So, what I would like to understand here is in a very direct manner, what could be the playbook to address those challenges? And this is a first question for Matt.
Yeah, so I think, this, what you described there is obviously not anything that's new. I mean, this friction has been there for, forever, probably. But it's certainly been exacerbated, as you say, and I talked about organisations trying to be more data-driven. Obviously, if you want people in non-technical roles, for want of a better phrase, to have access to and use data, you need to give them the skills, obviously you need the technologies, but you need to facilitate that with business process change as well. And I think this is where organisations are, and a lot of them are struggling. Clearly there's no silver bullet on that. It's not about you can just adopt a specific technology and that's it. As I said, it is a combination of people and process and organisational change. But I do think that we've seen, to pick one technology that would, to sort of start with, that can help, would be, the catalog as a centralized resource, obviously in combination with the data lake, because that provides the data management professionals with an environment where they can set the guardrails in terms of governance, and security and privacy and access controls. But obviously potentially enables the business users also to have more access to data, easier access, self-service access to data, obviously within the context of those guardrails, I put it. And it is something that we've seen, if anything, in combination with a change in attitude towards data governance, those kind of technologies can enable organizations actually to go faster. Because as I say, those guardrails are in place that facilitate self-service, but in a managed and governed way.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much, Matt, for this first question. So let's try to exemplify, right, this kind of challenges. And my next question is for Peter and Richard, is about, perhaps you can share some concrete examples, right, of this kind of challenges that you went through, most probably before adopting Dremio, and something that is pretty important for us as well is the key value drivers, right, that pushed you to address those challenges, and adopt a self-service approach to data access.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the key things, and I think coming to your point about the data lake as being an enabler, it's been an enabler to put a lot of data into an environment, and the catalog is a key part of that. And it's like the cataloging is almost, there's a tension between governing the data and the speed at which you can put it in there. And I think, one of the challenges that we've seen is that we wanted to get a lot of data and make it available to people, but then the governance has had to catch up on that. And what that leads to is, I think, a degree of friction in being able to access the data. And what we've seen is that maybe because we have silo teams, Maersk is a large global organization, we have a wide range of business units that are using our data lake and wanting to use some of the same data, but we've ended up with duplication and proliferation of data sets. So I think that is one of our kind of like key challenges, that then slow down the ability to actually access data, and that's very much, I think, the thrust of what we're trying to address now with cataloging, and particularly around how you can get the value of fast data into the environment, but using automation, automatic scanning of files as well to sort of try and automate a lot of that process of cataloging and classifying data and making it available to users more speedily.
Thank you. That's very insightful. And let's change gear and have the point of view on the same topic, but more from a consulting firm, and get the opinion of Shamil. Beyond the technology and the platform aspects, right? As mentioned by Matt during his presentation, there is a huge component that is being driven by processes, people, and culture, right? So could you please also share with us your view on those aspects, please?
Yeah, so I guess when I kind of go into a new client who kind of come to me with saying kind of they need a data strategy, or kind of they've got a challenge and they need to implement a data catalog, I guess the approach I really employ is really trying to understand them as an organization, understand kind of what their C-suite are looking for, what their strategy is, and kind of what is hindering them from a kind of data perspective. And that's fundamentally important. And the way I see kind of, all the kind of capability, the design patterns that we've got available to us, from, a data mart to a data lake to now a data mesh. These for me are all different tools that kind of allow us to really think about how an organization wants to operate in the future. And the journey that I take kind of organizations on is really, well, let's try and find out where's the value going to come from, and let's solve that first. Let's solve that and try and prove technology patterns and architecture to work out what's right and fit for purpose for the organization. That helps you to go on a journey of discovery with customers, with the users of the kind of systems, to then start thinking about, okay, well, what's the future here? And I think that then what comes behind that is, okay, to kind of manage a data mesh, to kind of have the right capabilities holistically in an organization, there is a thought process about the operating model, the organizational capabilities that are required to do that. And that's a long-term journey, especially with the scarcity of skills in the market. So we look at that as a kind of how do you kind of solve for that kind of business value up front, learn from the kind of experience of working with your customers, but then build the foundations that are going to give you a future state, looking at the skills and the capability you need. I mean, that duality is fundamentally important for success, and you see so many projects kind of fail because they haven't thought about that kind of overall kind of organizational need and kind of the operating model that they need.
Thank you, Sham. Back to you, Matt. Now, what we would like to understand is the evolution of data platforms, right? So data warehouses were ruling the world for the past several decades. And now we are noticing the emergence of data lakehouses, and more specifically of open data lakehouses. So could you please share with us why you believe, if it is the case, obviously, that data lakehouses or open data lakehouses are going really to establish themselves as a credible alternative to data warehouses moving forward?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would agree, certainly there is the potential for the data lakehouse to establish itself. As I said, we already see the data lake, and by that, with the addition of capabilities on that, the data lakehouse is already a significant part of the overall data ecosystem. Interestingly, we see in our data, at least, actually, I was going to say very few, but it's about a quarter of organizations that say they have replaced data warehousing entirely with a lake or lakehouse. And it's a relatively small number. In the majority of organizations, they have data lakehouse or data lake, and they also have data warehouse. And they're perhaps potentially feeding data between the two as it makes sense given a particular analytic initiative or workload. And clearly there are some organizations still that just have data warehouse, don't have data lake or data lakehouse. So it definitely we're in this market is evolving. I think definitely the direction of travel is towards lakehouse from data lake because of those capabilities that are now being added to those environments. Many of which are obviously things that are proven in a warehousing environment and now being adapted and being brought to the data lake to provide additional value on the data that is in those environments. And the data is in those environments primarily because it was, maybe not the right format or the volume to fit in a traditional data warehouse, which obviously has different cost and complexity aspects to it. So I'd say at the moment it's very much a matter of the two coexisting. Clearly, we also see an evolution in the data warehouse space, where many of the vendors there are adapting their offerings to work alongside and sit alongside, object storage as the persistence layer. And so, is that a lakehouse? Some people would say it is. Others would definitely say it's absolutely not. So we try to use slightly different terminology to talk about the overall direction, which is the combination of, the data lake and the analytic processing capabilities. But definitely, within that, I'd say lakehouse is absolutely here to stay. And for those, as I said, for those organizations that have already made an investment in the data lake, that first phase, data lakehouse is definitely, the direction of travel to generate even more value from those investments.
Okay, so back to Richard and Peter, maybe 2 words: coexistence of data warehouse and data lakehouse, or revolution versus evolution. Could you please comment?
Yeah, I think one of the drivers for us, first of all, for like the adoption of Lakehouse is that I see it as we can create a more self-contained sort of like enterprise service that we can deliver out to different parts of the organization to support an overall data mesh architecture. So really, at the end of the day, it is, I think, a revolution.
Okay.
And it's very much about getting that lakehouse architecture correct with the right tooling for whether it's fast SQL query or high performance compute, Spark or whatever for analytical workloads, and that sort of governance wrap and data sort of visibility and accessibility through the cataloging. And I think that our driver is to really try and reduce the cost of ownership of that and actually be able to support multiple implementations of a standardized architecture and through that, actually, it really helps sort of fix that speed to value thing that Richard was talking about, the governance, the accessibility of data, and I think it just reduces the cost of ownership overall. So it is going to be ultimately a revolution, I think.
Okay. Any comment, Sham, on this same topic?
Yeah, no, I guess kind of when I reflect on organisations, what you typically find now is actually they've got a combination of everything. They've got a combination of data masts, they've got kind of data sitting under people's desks to kind of lake houses, and some kind of moving on to a data mesh. I think kind of the key to all of this, in my mind, is kind of going back to kind of really understanding kind of what you're trying to solve for, and I think that's where I see a lot of kind of projects fail. And I think there absolutely could be a revolution, but I think customers need very different things and tools, which is going back to my point earlier. I think kind of the plethora of kind of innovation in this industry, the plethora of tools we've now got and different patterns and models to solve different problems and use cases is phenomenal. And I think kind of that our job gets more and more complex because actually we need to understand all of those, understand what users need, and kind of how do you kind of join up all these kind of concepts and tools together. So I think there is absolutely an opportunity for a revolution in leveraging some of these technologies, some of these concepts, but the way you implement it, the approach you take, how do you engage users, how do you do kind of training and adoption is going to be critical for that revolution to be successful.
Okay, great. So let's focus on the openness or the open side of the house, right? Of the open data lakehouse. And this is a question for you, JB. You know, when you've spent a couple of decades with the open source community, most probably you have witnessed also the emergence of what you may call de facto standards, right? In multiple domains. Could be, I mean, the last one that at least would come to my mind is file format, right? Now I would like to get your opinion about open table format, right? If you can tell us a little bit more about that, and potentially about the emergence of some de facto standards in the open table format, please.
Yeah, so I think the most important when we talk about de facto standard is probably the adoption. That's the way that the project become a successful project from an open source standpoint. So when we talk about adoption, there are two parts. We have the technology part and the community and governance, which is completely sometimes related, but not necessary. So if we talk about the technology, especially for the table format, we have the technology to be speed and performant, and the features that is provided for the end users. So in table format, we can mention like log compaction, time travel. All these part are basically the feature that allows you to say, okay, this table format is the one I need for my use case. On the other hand, there are also the governance and community. There's a huge difference between a project under the Apache license and a project from the Apache Foundation. Because in terms of governance, it's not the same at all. You can be a project under the Apache license, but it's controlled by a single company. So this company decides the releases, it decides the features they want to include or not. An open governance is a way to guarantee an adoption on any kind of, let's say, use cases and generally speaking. So the interesting fact, and Matt mentioned during the presentation, is all table format today are open source. Delta Lake, Hudi, Apache Hudi, and Apache Iceberg. So the difference is going to be on these two criteria, the governance of a project and the features provided. So saying that there are one better than another is not really relevant. It depends on your use case, it depends what you are looking for. But if you keep in mind these two criteria, you can have your own opinion about which one is probably the most sustainable.
Okay. Maybe a loaded answer.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's try to close this debate perhaps with some experience sharing, right? So, I mean, we started the discussion about the challenges and about ways to address those challenges from a people, process, technology, culture perspectives. So I would like now to get back to Peter, Richard, and Shamil. Shamil with perhaps the hat not of a consulting firm, but of a customer with whom you are working to tell us about how Dremio has helped your company address the challenges that you mentioned before. Let's start from.
Okay. I think one of the challenges that probably was inherent in our environment was some of the complexity and the range of tooling that we had and the layers that we had within our data architecture. And I think what we've been able to do with Dremio is to remove certain things like a database performance layer for our Power BI reporting, and that's worked very well, where we've used Dremio directly over ADLS datasets to power for Power BI reporting, and that's worked. So I think in terms of reducing some of the copies or the layers of data that we actually had within our environment, and effectively either virtualizing those within or having reflections for them within Dremio has worked really well. I think that's probably one of the key things.
Thank you.
I'm gonna answer a slightly different question because we've got kind of Costas and Nick are going to talk about RWE, who I've been working with the last 3 years on a journey, and tell you about kind of some of the benefits that we kind of see through kind of the work that we've done there. But I think kind of if I reflect on the journey that we've been through, kind of starting about 3 years ago, I think now, with the strategy around the organisation and kind of looking at what kind of organisation that they want to be, I think I guess the advice that we'll kind of go on is really understand kind of who are the users that are going to, I guess, be the most vocal, are going to be the users that are going to be the hardest to please. Get them into a room with the products that you're looking at and considering as you go through this journey, and get them to try them out, test them, and you'll learn so much from that. That's kind of what we did. We looked at kind of what are the hardest use cases, what are the ones that are going to test the platform significantly around kind of the performance and the kind of volume of data. What are the kind of non-functionals around kind of security and kind of accessibility to kind of individuals? What are the ways of working these individuals, and kind of use that really as your guide to select the right products that you want. And kind of, as I said, Nick and Costas are going to talk to you about kind of our journey with Dremio and kind of why we ultimately kind of chose that kind of product in that scenario and those set of use cases.
Okay, great. So concluding remarks from JB about the future of the open data lakehouse. So, I mean, we've seen some innovation initially at the file format level, right? So we used to work with maybe flat files, and then we decided that these are not suitable for analytics. So some new file format emerged, Parquet, Orc, and then we went to a level above, talking about open table format. This is the debate that is currently ongoing, okay? And the next level of innovation will come from the metadata, okay? So metadata has been maybe left aside for several years. We are still using the Hive Metastore, which is perhaps the only remaining legacy from the Hadoop data stack. So JB, could you please tell us what's going on from an innovation perspective in the metadata space?
So yeah, that's metadata is actually a very important topic for when we talk about table format, because table format is on top of the data files, and so you bring some database style on top of the data files. But to do that, you need the metadata. So you need a catalog with all the metadata inside, and manage the way you can create different kind of tables, roll back to, if you do time travel, roll back to a previous version of a table extra. So if you take an example like Apache Iceberg, disconnected the catalog from the table itself. So you can use JDBC as a catalog database, basically. You can use NACI, which is another kind of catalog. And what's happening now is in this catalog, we have very different way of managing the metadata. At Dremio, for instance, we have created a project on top of NACI, which is named Arctic. That's a service on the cloud. And we do that data as code. So basically, you can use exactly the same Git way of managing your data as you do on the code. So you can do commit, rollback, branching. So imagine you can create, I have a branch now, and I would like to create another branch just to test my data. I can create this branch, merge back the data into my main branch, or scratch the branch if I want. And you can have all the log extra. So that's, in my opinion, that's one of the big things that's happening right now. It's all about data as code.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That was very, very insightful. So we still have maybe 2-3 minutes. That wasn't planned, but if there is any question in the audience, I mean, for the panel, we'd be happy to consider it. Yes, please.
I've been working on this area of data mesh, data lake for a bank. Thank you. I've been working on this topic of data mesh and data lakehouse for a private bank in Switzerland. We started this journey 3 to 4 years back. Metadata is a key, yes, but understanding data itself is one of the top priority. And no organization or very few organizations have data documented. Here I'm talking about not only structured data, metadata, operational metadata, and business metadata. Unless we have business metadata in place, it's very difficult for end users or business users to understand, because see, every organization has multiple applications. Each of those applications have their own data schema, data structure. For any data scientist, data analyst, business analyst, they need to understand data they want to use in real time or on demand. So what has been your approach in getting to a level where business can understand the data and how it can be delivered? Because it's a very complex challenge or very difficult to get those documented.
Thank you very much. Who would like to take this question?
I'm happy to, if that's okay. So, look, I mean, there's no easy answer to this. I mean, it's a complex kind of world where you've got multiple kind of different sources, all with similar sort of data, mergers, acquisitions, kind of global kind of systems with localization of kind of data sets, and you come across that constantly. I mean, the approach that I employ is typically one of, let's work out kind of where the value is across the data, what the use cases are that we kind of need to solve, and what's going to make the exec and the board happy in terms of kind of the insight that you deliver. You then focus your resources from a governance perspective, from a architecture perspective, from a data modeling perspective on those set of use cases, and you slowly kind of build out kind of a platform, solving iteratively, building incremental kind of value, and solving for each of those kind of use cases in turn. Which what that does is, I mean, it makes sure that the investment that you put into solving that problem is justified as you kind of incrementally build the kind of platform out. The kind of historical thinking about rolling out a huge governance organization with lots of stewards and owners has failed numerous times when I've seen it. That doesn't work because they are all got day jobs, and you don't give them the tools and the kind of capability. So you're trying to fix like a history and a legacy of kind of bad practices in kind of managing data, which is never going to work. So it has to be pragmatic, it has to be value driven, and it has to be bringing the people that understand this data with you on a journey and making sure that their role and their value is recognized as you go through that. That's how I kind of get it to work. That's the only way I've seen it kind of work, work in terms of kind of delivering that. But so look, any organization, it's a long, slow, painful journey, which we have to face into as data kind of professionals.
Okay, thank you very much, Shamil. Thank you very much, gentlemen.